All right, so welcome everybody officially to today's presentation. We have our guest Mike Amico here with us today. But of course, I always start off all of our virtual presentations by first introducing myself. My name is Donito Burgess. I'm the Community Engagement Manager here at Tucson Audubon. And I always talk about what our mission here at Tucson Audubon is. And we're out here to inspire people to enjoy and protect birds. One of the ways that we feel that that happens the best is just simply by getting out there and birding, taking pictures of birds, seeing the birds with the binoculars. We really are passionate and feel that once you get out there, you can't help but care. It's almost impossible to remain indifferent, both to the beautiful environment you're in, as well as the birds that you're looking at. So that's a big part of why we do this, as well as to say thank you for being a part of our community. We're trying to give these educational opportunities. And one of the ways that we are able to do this is through our partnership with Hunts Photography. Hunts Photo sponsors all of these events. We have Gary Farber here on with Hunts Photo. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him at this point, and then he'll introduce Mike and we'll get underway. Go ahead, Gary.
All right, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming on. So real quickly, those who don't know me, my name is Gary. I work for Hunts Photo and Video. I've been with Hunts, believe it or not, and going on my 30th year. I started when I was a young kid, when I was 14 years old. I'm still a young kid, but I'm young and high. Really, what I strive on more is the personalized service, the personal touch, and building those long-term working relationships. That really, what's more important to me than anything else than making a sale just to make a sale. I like it's really about building a community and building a bonding with my customers, kind of like with the festivals and things like that. So if you ever need anything, look for anything, reach out to me. Give me the opportunity in the business. I will be at the festival this year. It'll be my third year coming. So I will be there with a table, and I am sponsoring. Helping bring in a couple younger photographers to come in and do a presentation. Actually, there'll be someone on in August. He's not coming this year, but he's going to do a really good program on I think it's shortbird photography. I forget what it is, the topic, but it's Alice Eisinger. And he's a really incredible speaker. So that's the topic for August. But for this festival coming up, we'll have Christopher Smith and Simon Tolzman will be doing workshops out in the field and doing some stuff. Simon was there. Both of them have been there in the past and will be returning. So if you go into the festival, look them up and take one of the classes and all the other amazing classes that happen during the festival. Everybody does a really great job putting it all together, and this is this festival is a really great festival to attend. So I look forward to seeing you there and being part of it. And without further ado, I want to thank Olympus for sponsoring this program. I've known Mike for, I don't know, 20 years, maybe longer.
Yep.
I don't know. He's seen me grown up in the industry, and now he's repping Olympus. So without further ado, I'll let Mike take this thing over. And
Yeah.
if you need anything, or if you need anything on gear, I'll put my information down in the chat. I'll provide specials to you on Olympus and anything else you need. So, and maybe even give you the Celtics discount. So, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mike. So go
Thanks,
ahead.
Gary. Hey, everybody. I appreciate it, Gary. Thanks, Danito. And I'm going to go ahead, you guys, and share my screen here. And I'm going to actually stop my video so you don't have to stare at my face the whole time here. It'll be a little bit better for you. And let's see. I want to make sure you can see everything here. Let's see. Share. And you should be able to see that now. Is everything looking okay here? All right. Should be good. All right. So, just so you know, we're going to be talking about tips for photographing birds. Now, I am the least birder in the room. So I've been photographing the birds for about 9 years now. So I'm still learning. And I'm still learning the birds. And you guys would wreck me in the field knowing the birds. So I feel like you have an advantage being a birder versus a bird photographer because you can, definitely learn photography, but man, learning the birds takes a lifetime. So I'm just beginning that journey now at 51 years old. So that said, we'll go over some gear selection today. We'll go over some Micro Four Thirds information and also some tips on birding or bird photography, I should say, as well as some settings. And let's go ahead and talk about it. So my name is Mike Amico, and I've been in this industry about 24 years. So yeah, I've been dealing with Gary and Hunts for that amount of time. Been with a few different companies. And like I said, I really enjoy photographing, birds and wildlife. And it started when Olympus came out with the 300 millimeter back in 2016. I had started with the company in 2015, and once that lens came out, it was just fantastic. And I live in near Akron, Ohio, right now, Cuyahoga Falls, and there's a national park behind me, and we have some great, blue heron out there. And so I started photographing the heron, and just fell in love with just looking at these images of these birds, and just you just fall in love with it. So I loved being out in nature, and from there the passion just grew. And I just want to mention again that we're doing this in conjunction with Hunts. And if you need to reach out to Gary, here's his email right there, gfarber@huntsphoto.com. And Gary can help you out with anything you need. They carry all the brands, and they do a wonderful job. So I thank Hunts and Gary for that. All right. And here's what we're going to talk about today. So, the key when I do these presentations is just to make sure everybody leaves with a nugget or two. You may know everything I'm talking about, or you may know nothing of what I'm talking about, but I feel like I did my job if you walk away going, I didn't think of that, or maybe I'll try that, or, something along those lines. That makes me feel like I did my job. So, we'll talk about some OM System benefits. And OM System is the brand name now for the former Olympus. We'll do a little gear overview. We'll talk about some of the gear that we have, what I recommend in my lineup. Um, so I'll do a little commercial in the beginning, basically, because I am a technical account manager for the brand. And then I'll go through 16 birding tips I have for you. And from there, we'll go over some settings. And even though these are based on the OM cameras, most of these will work on any camera for the most part. It's just a matter of certain features I may have that wouldn't, but we'll go through that. And then I'll show you some of my personal custom settings, which is something important when you're photographing birds. And again, everything's with a grain of salt, whether it's the tips or whether it's the settings. I find that there's really no bad way or right way to shoot birds. They're one of the hardest things I've ever photographed in my life. And really, it's a matter of taking the camera and taking your style and then incorporating other settings into it until you find that style that you love. So let's talk about it. One thing I like to talk about is prints. And don't forget to print your images. We like to share now. We like to blow them up online. We like to put them on Facebook and social media, but there's still nothing like holding a final image in your hand. And you don't need to be afraid of printing large, no matter what size your sensor is or what you read about online or anything. You can print a lot with a little. It's an industry that's different from the camera part of it. It's a whole different industry on its own, and it's come a long way. And it's amazing what you can do with printing. So definitely explore that, and don't be afraid to print big. So let's talk about the benefits of the system that I sell. So the OM system benefits, we're talking about the 4/3 cameras. So our sensor is about half the size of a 35 millimeter sensor. And so what that does, it allows us to be compact and powerful. It allows us to have a 2 times crop, which gives us more reach on our zoom lenses, which helps in this category. But there's other things as well. It makes it easier to carry a smaller, lighter kit with that reach. And you also have some great telemacro capabilities. So this is Kevin Laughlin here from Wildside Nature Tours on the right. And I just met Kevin that day. It was 2018. He had a heart attack the year before, and he had to have a lighter system, and he switched over. And the gentleman next to him has the competition and the equal focal length. So what you're going to see out of Kevin's camera is the same thing that guy's going to see, that gentleman, who I can't believe he was carrying it without a tripod, but he did. Bless him. But the cool thing is that Kevin also has another camera hanging off his side. He's got a 40 to 150 with a 1.4 converter and EM1 Mark II at the time. And if a butterfly or a bird landed in front of these guys, Kevin has a telemacro capability. He can shoot within about 4 feet with that lens, whereas the other gentleman has to be about 15 feet away to get focus. So there's a lot of benefits when it comes to the system with that. And when you're carrying lighter gear, it gives you a lot more energy, more flexibility. And what I love about it is you get to enjoy nature while you're out there photographing nature. And that's the beauty of it, right? It's not about the equipment getting in your way. It's about keeping that equipment away from, the actual event that you're witnessing. So one of the great things about the system is that for the last 20 years, we were the first ones to do a dust reduction technology. You turn on the cameras and it shakes the sensor about 30,000 times and knocks the dust off. So when you're outside, you're in a dusty environment, you don't have to worry as much about changing lenses. You rarely see an Olympus or OM camera in for service as far as cleaning because it keeps that dust off the sensor. The other thing is if you're doing any kind of macro, that 4/3 sensor gives you a greater depth of field. So there's more in focus when you get close to a subject. So you really have a great system when it comes to shooting close up and shooting animals at a closer distance. The other thing is the weather sealing. And I know I'm going quick here, but I'm doing my little commercial. The weather sealing is second to none. So when I started with the company, I'd always heard how, the Oli cameras were just like so weather sealed. And so I went to the Columbus Zoo with my kids and I left my camera sample out all day long while it poured. People looking at me funny, but you know what? It never failed. It worked perfectly well. And so I trust the cameras now. We actually have a rating now. Most of them are IPX1 or IP53. That's an ingress protection rating. We pay to have that tested so that the cameras have this rating that shows how weather sealed and how dust protected they are when you're out in the field. And you might think, well, why would I use that? But think about how many times you're out there, birding and it starts raining. And the first thing you do is put your camera away or you put a bag over your camera. And then it rains again, and you can only really use it once, or you're getting water on your camera again. So, this makes it really easy to use the camera system out in the rain. And when you do, you get some really neat shots, right? Everything gets more saturated. You get some really fun stuff. For example, you get things like this where you see some of that rain coming down and everything's nice and saturated. So shooting in the rain is kind of fun, and you can do it with the system. So a lot of fun. So one of the other things that we do with this system is that because that sensor size is a little bit smaller and the processing has gotten so fast, we're able to work with computational photography a lot more. A lot of things you see in your phone and then beyond. Some of this stuff is making its way up to the larger cameras, which is great for the industry, but we're still doing a lot more. So things like Pro Capture, where you focus and meter on a subject and then capture it after it happens. So you get your reaction time back. And we'll talk about that further in the presentation. The AI detection autofocus, the bird focus, which works really, really well. High resolution shooting. So you have a 20 megapixel sensor, but you can get a 50 megapixel image handheld, which is pretty neat. Focus stacking and bracketing, something that works more for landscape or for macro. Live composite is one of our long exposure modes. So if you're doing things like star trails or, painting with light, as well as live ND. So if you know what an ND filter does, if you look at the image, it's sort of one of the things people do is they get that milky look with a waterfall. You could do that in the camera without a filter. And now we have live graduated neutral density, which allows you to, if you want to shoot a sunset or something and really bring that graduated neutral density down, you can do that in the camera. And then, of course, Starry Sky autofocus. The cameras will focus on the stars, autofocus, which is kind of cool. So there's some of the computational technologies we've worked on over the years. And one of the best image stabilizer systems in the industry. You press that shutter button halfway, it focuses in meters, and it also locks in that image and really gives you a great image stabilization. And we're up to 8.5 stops now. So you kind of get used to this after a while, where you're shooting at such a slow shutter speed or just grabbing that bird and just locking it right in. Works really well. Basically, as you move, the sensor shifts and it compensates for your movement. So let's talk about gear. So my gear in the cameras, I have two cameras I recommend. If somebody was to come to me and say, I want your birding camera, it would be the OM1 Mark II. It's my pro camera, and it is my best camera for birding. It has all the speed, it has the bird detection autofocus, and it has all the weather resistance. It's magnesium alloy. It's got a nice grip on it. It's got a battery that lasts a long time, and it feels good with the longer lenses. And the OM5 is my mid-range camera. It's a great little camera for travel and then to do a little bit of backyard birding. It'll do it. You're going to have to do it yourself. There's no bird focus, but we didn't have it a few years ago. And the camera is a compact little, nice little kit. So the OM5 would be where I would start, but the OM1 Mark II would be the camera I would mostly push bird photographers to. As far as lenses, when you get into bird photography, as most of you know, it's going to be zoom lenses mostly, right? And it's the most expensive part of photography. They get more expensive the faster you go with the aperture on the lenses, the more light you're allowed to let in. And obviously, the pro lenses, the pro coatings, and things of that nature, everything starts to get more and more expensive as you go. So, um, this is what I have to date for my zoom lenses. And in any format you might shoot now, whether you shoot, let's say Fuji or Sony or Canon, um, everybody has their equivalent lenses. It's always going to be that longest one, right? You want the most reach you can afford, pretty much, and you want a nice lens. And so for my lenses, a 75 to 300 on the left there is my entry level. That's like my entry level zoom lens. It'll get you a reach. Remember, we have 2 times with the 4/3 sensor. So that's like a 150 to 600. And it's like the size of a water bottle. It's tiny. It's not weather resistant, but it's a great little starter lens. If you're shooting in the middle of the day, you got a lot of light. It's not a bad little lens to start with. But it's not the quality of my other lenses. My next lens there is the 40 to 150 Pro. Now that's a high quality lens, but you're only 80 to 300 equivalent. So you're not getting that reach out of that lens. But what you can do is add a 2 times teleconverter. All of the lenses on this page, except for that 75 to 300, are weather resistant, and they'll take the teleconverters. So that 2 times teleconverter on the 40 to 150 gives you an equivalent 160 to 600 f/6, and it's a small weatherproof lens, which is amazing. The 300 millimeter is the one I talked about earlier, and that's the f4 Pro. It's got image stabilizer on it. It syncs with the body. It's called Sync IS, and that is my favorite lens. That lens is just fantastic. It's one of the sharpest lenses Olympus ever made. It is a prime lens, which means you're at 300 or 600 equivalent focal length, and you're not going to be able to zoom. So you got to either move back or move forward, but that's a super sharp lens. And then my biggest seller, my best seller at the birding shows is the 100 to 400. It's not a pro lens, but it's what I call a premium lens. It's a great range. You're an equivalent of 200 to 800 at a 5 to 6.3, and it is stabilized. So it's a nice little combo. It's at about $14.99 before any rebates. So it's a nice price for what you get. And the next one is my newest one, is a 150 to 600 or a 300 to 1200. And you can hand hold that. That's pretty incredible. And that's got sync image stabilizer. So think about this. At 150, you're at 7-stop stabilization with the OM1 Mark II. And when you're stretched all the way out, you're zoomed all the way out to 600 or 1200 equivalent, you're at 6 stops. That's amazing. So it's a little bit of a hefty lens, but you're getting a super range on it. And then, of course, the best lens I offer, and one of the best in the industry for birding, is the 150 to 400 f4.5 Pro, that white lens on the bottom. And that's a very unique lens. It looks like it would be heavy when you see it. It's not at all. You can go all day long with that thing hanging off you. And it's got a built-in 125 converter, so you'll get out to 1,000 millimeters at 5.6 handheld. It's a amazing lens. That lens is $74.99. But it's every bit worth it if you're shooting birds all the time, photographing birds all the time, I should say. And many people that shoot other systems will buy that lens. They'll say, well, I could put 18 grand into my, my Nikon 600 millimeter, or I could buy an OM1 II in that lens, and I could travel to the Galapagos every year with it and put it in a backpack. So it's kind of a secondary kit for a lot of people, as well as the main kit. So pretty neat little setup, but that's my recommended lenses there. There's a lot to look at, and I'll be at the show this year, so you guys can check out all this stuff if you come to the show, in person. This is a cool little gadget here, and I love mentioning this. I gave one of these away last year. This is the EE1, the Eagle Eye dot sight. It's about $129 retail. It's weatherproof, and it's a laser sight, and it works on any camera. It goes onto the hot shoe, but it's a cold shoe. There's no electronic contact there. And basically what it does, you take your zoom lens and you set it up so that the laser is in the center of this piece and in the center of your your EVF when you shoot, or LCD, I'm sorry, on the back of your camera when you shoot. So the idea is that, let's say you have an eagle nesting and the eagle takes off. With our cameras and these zoom lenses, you're trying to find it in a little viewfinder while it's taking off. With this, you can hold the camera out in front of you, move the camera along with the eagle and keep that laser sight out there on it. And as you shoot, the idea is that it's in the center of your LCD. It works. It's a nice little kind of aid to have in your bag. So this is a really cool piece, the EE1 dot sight. Kind of a neat little piece there. All right, so I'm going to get into some tips for you guys. Is there any questions so far? Anything that popped up that we should go through, or do you want to wait till the end there, Danilo?
We are all clear on the chat right now, so we are free to keep on trucking.
Cool. I tried to go quick on that, you guys, because it's definitely like a commercial for the company, right? And we want to get into the fun stuff here. So let's get into some
Actually,
bird photography tips. Oh, go ahead.
sorry, Mike. As
No, you're
actually,
good.
as I said that, Mark raised his hand. So, Mark, if you have a
Hey,
question,
Mark.
please feel free to unmute
Hi.
yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, Gary, I actually own the OM-DEM1 Mark III camera, and I've
Sure.
been happy with it. And I also have the 300 uh, millimeter pro lens that you mentioned.
Awesome lens. Yeah.
And my problem is with the 300 fix, it takes me a while to kind of get the focus sometimes, and I
Yep.
miss photos that my wife gets. I've been contemplating getting the OM1 Mark II. Like, how much of a difference does it make? You know, sometimes like the warblers move so fast that I kind of
Right.
miss them. So many times I'm just like a fourth of a second too late.
Yeah, the OM1 Mark II is a whole different camera. So it is a different architecture, right? Because you have a different sensor setup, and you also have a different processor. So the processor in the OM1 II is about three to four times faster than the EM1 Mark III. So it's a lot quicker. It's a lot quicker and more accurate on the focus. Though the warblers are quick, like you said, and they go in and out of the branches a lot. So what I find is, and you could use this if you're not already, you may already be using this, but have you tried the autofocus plus manual?
Autofocus plus, I don't think
Yeah,
so.
in your camera in the menu, you can go to autofocus area in the tool menu or the gear menu, and there should be a section that says AF plus MF. And if you turn that on, it allows you to autofocus. Like let's say you're in continuous autofocus, um, it'll show up as continuous autofocus plus manual. So when you focus on the bird, you can also, as you're pressed halfway down and focusing, you can manually focus and you'll get peaking. So if the bird goes in and out of those branches, you can almost take over with manual here and there. It takes a little getting used to, but I find that it's successful when they're going in and out of those branches, so you don't lose focus as much. So play with that a little bit, see what that does. The other thing is a focus limiter on the. Do you use the focus limiter at all on the 300?
I don't think so.
So I'll talk about that after the tips. I'll get into a section on the focus limiter. And that's one that may help you a little bit. It's just that you got to remember if you're using it that you have it on. But I'll go through that and you'll see what that does. I think that might help as well. So I would try that first. And if you want to, are you coming to the festival?
Probably not.
Okay. All right. Cause I'll have a camera you could try out if you wanted to try out the two, there, you can loan it. I could loan it for, for a little while and you could test it out. But otherwise it is a fantastic camera. So it is definitely accurate. It is a good upgrade. But the EM13 is a great camera. There's nothing wrong with it. So, but I would try that first. I would try the AF plus MF and then watch when I go through that focus limiter and then give that a shot too.
Great.
For sure.
Thank you very
Cool.
much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. I actually had a couple more come in while you were answering
Sure.
that, Mike.
Sure.
Barbara was asking, is the 100 through 400 millimeter lens weatherproof?
Yes, it's IPX1 rated, so it's called splash proof. But yes, you could take it out in the rain. And these things are literally like, I mean, you could literally run them under a faucet. That's how weatherproof they are. You just can't dunk them because where the lens meets the body, obviously you'll have a fail, right? Because there's pressure. But it's pouring rain and you're perfectly fine. But yep, it is weatherproof.
Wonderful. And then Mindy asked if you could compare the 150 through 600 versus the 150 through 400
Yeah,
again.
yep. They're definitely different animals, right? So the 150 to 600, the new one, that's a premium lens. It's not a pro lens. It has good coatings. It's sharp. It's going to be sharper than say the 100 to 400, but it's a bigger, heftier lens. but it's going to get you a lot of reach, right? You're going to get out to 1200 millimeters. So that's going to be the 150 to 600. It's also going to have a little bit of a different balance because when you zoom out, you're going to be extending the lens, right? The 150 to 400, it has a carbon fiber hood and it's all internal focus. So completely different lens. It's a pro lens. It's got all the pro coatings. It's also got some elements in there that are a little bit different and they're made of different materials. So it's much more lightweight. It probably weighs more like a 300 millimeter, about 3.5, 4 pounds, as opposed to probably 4.5 pounds on the other one. But that 150 to 600 is a sharp little lens. It's a nice lens, and it's about 26.99, I believe. You're ranging from before any rebates, you're looking at 100 to 400, 14.99, 26.99 on the 150 to 600, and then 74.99. So it's a big difference on that big lens. So, but nice lens in between the two for sure. Hope that
Excellent.
helps. Yeah.
Sorry, I just have one last question. And this was from Richard. He was wondering if the OM1 Mark II is a significant improvement from the OM1.
So it's an improvement. I wouldn't say significant. I'd say you're probably about 15% faster and more accurate on your focusing. So the biggest thing on there is that you have a bigger buffer. And so you're able to, you won't fill that buffer. If you're doing a lot of pro capture, a lot of fast frame per second shooting, it allowed us to do not only more computational features and stuff because more memory, but that buffer just keeps going. So that's the nice thing about it. If you're doing landscape, you got the graduated neutral density. The rubberized dials are really nice because they don't stick or anything, and they're nice ergonomically in the cold and stuff. They just feel really good with gloves and stuff. So that was a nice upgrade. Image quality wise, you're going to be the same. So OM1 on a great deal is still a great deal. It was really just a mid refresh on the camera, and they really did a nice job. But that's going to be your main thing is your focusing is going to be a little more accurate, a little faster, and you're going to have that bigger buffer. So, yeah.
All right. And then last question before we get to your tip section. This question is from Tom. He asks, is the 150 through 600 an OM built by Sigma or a Sigma design built by OM with OM quality control and glass?
So all I could say on that is it was built in a factory in Japan with full OM system, um, with our building. So yeah,
Okay. Cool. Thank you so
but yeah,
much.
absolutely. At the last one.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay,
Yeah,
for
let's
now. Okay,
go ahead and
and we could
we'll
do
have some questions at the
we can
end.
grab the
Thank you
rest
so much.
after. Sure. All right,
All
so I'll
right.
get into the tips, you guys. Thank you so much for that, and I will get into the tips here. So let's see. All right, so I got 16 bird photography tips. Now, many of these you guys probably already know and you're going to laugh at, but let's go. Some are tips that I've come up with, some are some that I've seen, some I've grabbed from other shooters, and most of them take with a grain of salt because you can always break rules or tips. All right, so let's talk about it. So, number one is where can you find them? And you all know this because you're birders. But if you're starting out, I mean, a lot of people don't know where to look. So the first couple tips are going to be amateur, but you can start with local rescue centers. You can go to a local zoo. You got wildlife refuge. In the U.S., you could check out fws.gov is a great place to check out for where the refuge are in your state. ABA.org, of course, National Audubon Society, right? Audubon.org. But there's a lot of resources to finding birds. And that's more for me than you, I would say. Number two, though, is to start in your backyard. Why not put up a portable blind, right? Put up some bird feeders, some bird friendly bushes. It's great to practice right at home. When you're learning photography with birds, it's a lot different than birding. That there is a difference, and I found birders are there and they kind of spend the time with the bird, right? You want to capture the bird, you want to identify the bird, and then photographers, we're out there looking at the light. You know, we're kind of capturing like voyeurs, right? Capturing that moment. So It's a lot of fun seeing the differences here. And but setting up a portable blind, I shoot out my window in the kitchen. It's nice to play and learn your settings, and you get the same birds, right? So you get to see the same birds, and you kind of have a little theme going on outside. But number three is to watch the direction of both the sun and the wind. So typically, the birds are going to land and take off into the wind, right? Just like when you're at the airport and you're watching the flags and the planes come in and take off. That's what they're going to do most of the time. And you want to try to keep that sun at your back. And if the sun's at your back and the wind's at your back, it's great conditions for shooting birds in flight, right? Because they're going to come right at you and you're going to light them up. And when you light them up, it's really nice because you get the underside of the wings. They're all lit up. And something you're going to see through some of these tips that's going to be kind of a theme is to photograph birds when the sun is low. So early in the morning, right? They're more active later in the evening, just like portraiture, right? Just like landscape. In photography, it's always about that light. And so those are times a day where the light is nice and low, helps to light up the underside of the wings. And number four, isolate the subject as best you can. So again, like portraiture, right? You try to choose a clean background. Don't split the head with a tree trunk. And I say that I kind of laugh, but if you go on Facebook, you'll see even brides and grooms, and the bride's got a tree sticking out of her head, right? Somebody shot it with an iPhone. I mean, that's something you learn when you're learning photography. You try to keep it nice and clean, right? Try to avoid clutter, especially in front of the bird. Utilize a wider aperture. Try to get more light and use that longer focal length that helps to compress. So that longer focal length just brings it right in. If you think of scenes of like New York City, right? And you see the Brooklyn Bridge, and then you see like the Empire State Building, and everything just looks like it's right there because it's compressed. If you use a long lens, it looks like it's a lot closer. So same thing with a bird here. You want to try and fill up the frame as much as you can, or make a headshot of the bird. A lot of times you'll see like an environmental shot when people are starting out with photographing birds. And I was doing this. You'll have this beautiful landscape and a little bird in there, and the bird is the subject. So you really want to bring them in and showcase them. By the way, this print, I printed this out on a Canon printer at 24 by 36, and it was just amazing. I was like, I'm not ready to print. And Gary had a guy at a show, and he printed it for me. And I was like, holy cow. Like I said, the printers are just unbelievable. Number five is to focus on the eyes of the bird and try to get a catch light in the eyes. And this is, again, the same as a portrait. You look at a senior portrait, and the parent shot it, and they shot it with an iPhone. The kid's against the brick wall of the school, and his eyes are black. And then you see an amateur that's learning, or a professional, and they're using reflectors or flashes, and it puts light back into the eyes, and it makes us look alive. And it's the same thing with birds. When you put the light in the eyes, they look alive, right? It really gives them a nice pop there, and it really lights up that bird and makes them come to life. So these are the burrowing owls in Cape Coral, Florida. My sister lives over there, and they're right down the road. Love that. Now, I just said not to have clutter in your image, and here we go. But how many times do you have, clutter in an image, and you can't get rid of it? You can't get around it, and you want a shot of the bird. So what I like to do is work with, leading lines, try to be creative with it, maybe use some of the rules of photography, like in this case, the rule of thirds, which is where, you split up that scene into thirds, and you bring the viewer in, and maybe try to keep that head up in that top third over there on the left. And it sort of makes the branches work a little bit. So again, these are tips and tricks, and nothing is the absolute correct way to do something, but it just gives you an idea of how to make it work, when you're shooting this stuff. Hope I'm not going too fast for everybody. Number seven is to learn everything and become comfortable with the camera that you have. To me, this is one of the most important tips. The reason for that is, when you're not comfortable with your gear, you're not comfortable with shooting. You don't really know what your settings are, how to set it, what to do. And you're probably not going to get the shot, or you're going to get lucky every now and then. And, birds can be captured with any camera. You can capture them with an entry level camera. It doesn't have to be a big professional camera if you know the camera, if you know the shortcomings. If I take my entry level camera, it'll do 6.5 frames a second, whereas my pro camera will do up to 120 frames. I mean, I won't use that, but typically I'll use 10 or 12 or something along those lines. But the idea is that the focusing as well isn't as fast. but I know that. So if I'm shooting a bird in flight or a bird perching is fine. But I'll know that I'm only going to get so many shots, or I'll know to pan with the camera more, or you learn that camera and you can pretty much get everything. So you want to learn that equipment. Plus, you can anticipate movement. You can start using things like custom settings, and we'll talk about that. Set your metering, your burst mode ahead of time. Be ready for it so the camera's out of your way. It becomes an extension of you. Super important when you're shooting. Number 8 is for flying birds. Try to capture the wings in the up or down motion, no pancakes. And I say that, but I've seen some really cool pancakes. So sometimes you see some really neat stuff, but typically when the wings are up or down, it really gives you a nice image of a bird. So, and be aware of your shutter speed. Do you want to freeze action? Do you want to show movement on the larger birds? Like a 2500th of a second is a great place to start. And with larger birds, you can get away with, 1600th of a second. I mean, it's a matter of, do I want wingtip to wingtip frozen, or do I want it to be show a little bit of motion? And that's up to you. That's the artistic part of photography. With birds like hummingbirds, now you're more like 5,000th of a second, right? They're smaller, they're super fast. So that shutter speed, you want to keep it up. It's one of my favorite ones. Capture an odd number. So when you see like 3 birds and there's 4 in there, you yell at one to get out of the way. No, just kidding. You take it out in Photoshop. No, I'm just kidding. The idea here is that your image will be much more pleasing aesthetically with an odd number of subjects. So this is kind of going back to like the art world, right? So do you have to have 3 birds? No, you can have 4. But the idea is that maybe in this segment, I have 15 of these images because I was shooting at 20 frames a second. So when I'm editing, I could think about this now and I could pull out the shot that maybe is more aesthetically pleasing. So, typically we do have a lot of images when we're done shooting with these cameras today, because these modern cameras are so fast. They're all amazing, and so think about your shots when you're editing and go through that. And that goes with number 10 as well. They're kind of hand in hand. Try not to overlap the wings with the birds. And this is really tough. I have a ton of images with overlapped wings. But if you have the time to think about it when you're going through your images, again, with this shot here, I probably have 15 of these shots. So, you look for one where the wings aren't overlapped. In this case, I got one up, one down. I thought that was kind of cool. But with multiple birds, it's hard sometimes. But it's good to look for that stuff. Number 11 is to shoot early in the morning or later in the afternoon. And I talked about this earlier. I'm always out at noon because I'm working, and I'll take a break at lunch. And guess what? The wings are pitch black underneath, because the sun is directly above and coming down. It's really harsh. But birds are typically more active, right? During the morning or the afternoon. They're out feeding. The light's usually good. It's a little cooler. And so it's a great time to capture the birds, plus the color. I mean, if you have that golden light, it's going to take on if they're in a pond or anything like that. So great to shoot early in the morning or later in the afternoon. And again, this works with portraits. This works with, anything with landscape. And try not to make sudden movements. Birds sometimes do scare easily. Maybe stay low to the ground. Get on par with the bird. Spend some time with the birds. Don't just move around and look for the next one. And spend some time in a location, and see what's going on. They like to perch in the same areas. You start to watch like a kingfisher, and they're going to those same perches. You can stay in that spot and just watch them. Spend some time there. And if you get on their level, lay on your stomach or get on their level, you get some really neat shots. You're not looking down at them or looking up at them. And number 13 is to photograph what you love. And I say that, but I love green heron, by the way. They're my favorite. They're like Looney Tunes to me. But capture the subjects that move you. A lot of times we have our favorite birds, and I say this because as a newcomer into the community, I see a lot of people that, let's say there's an eagle near me. It's all over Facebook, I'll say. And there's a ton of people going to bother these eagles. They're just always there. They got their phones, they got all kinds of stuff going on. And it really, that harms the bird more than it helps the bird. So for me, when I hear there's something like that, it seems like there's a lot of activity. I actually don't bother. I'll go shoot what I want to shoot. I'm not going to bother that bird. It's one less person that will stress the bird. So I photograph on the next great and unique shot that I can get, and that's what you should do. Just photo, kind of focus on what you're doing and don't worry about everybody else. Number 14 is to be really patient, and this one's really important. It takes a long time to get some of the shots that we envision. And when you get them, it's awesome. I mean, it feels really good, right? But don't get frustrated. I mean, photography's hard, and bird photography, animal photography, it's one of the hardest things I've ever shot in my life. As a salesman or a tech going out in the stores, having customers come in and ask questions or not understand certain photography or having an issue, it's always kind of hard to like tell the customer they're doing something wrong. But with bird photography, I don't have a problem at all because it's really tough. Like most of the time, it's settings or it's metering or it's the lighting or the zoom or it's just that kind of category, and people learn from that. So you learn from your mistakes, and you just got to wait for the right conditions sometimes, and you'll get that shot. It's just a matter of being patient. And number 15 is to talk to other birders and bird photographers. And this is super important. Again, being new in this part of the industry, birders are some of the most friendly and interesting people I've ever met in my life. And the great thing is they're willing to teach, and they're willing to share. And I've learned to just pay attention, because I mean, I can walk into a trail and somebody will see my camera and say, "Oh, there's a such and such, half a mile down the road, 3 clicks to the right, over in the tree to the left, it's a birch tree." It's amazing, and they're very knowledgeable. And I find that other photographers and other birders are very knowledgeable and very fun people to talk to. So it's been a pleasure to be around. So definitely talk to other birders and bird photographers. I knew a guy in the industry when I started. He's passed away now. He was an older wedding shooter, and he shot for Carnival Cruises. He was a Canon shooter. He was one of their ambassadors. And one of the things he would say when he would teach, and I always remembered this, but it was not verbatim, but around, about, he would say that the day our industry stops sharing is the day that it dies. And I really believe that education is super important, and especially with photography. And so this is a really big one to me, because I do see that other categories like landscape and things like that, where people don't want to share. I can't tell you where that waterfall is, like you're going to get the same shot. And birders are very forthcoming, and it's very appreciative because you do learn from others. And my last one for tips is number 16 here, and that's not to give up. Kind of an obvious one, but don't. People do sometimes. Practice makes perfect. And the more you shoot, the more you learn about the subject and your gear, the better your images will grow to be. And I'll tell you, man, I know I work for OM, but every camera out there is amazing right now. And so for me, it's always, how does the camera feel in your hand? How is the technology for you? All the mirrorless cameras are computers. So you have to learn them, and you have to kind of pick them up every now and then so you know where your settings are and stuff. So they're fresh, but they're all good. They're all going to do it for you. It's a matter of, how much you want to spend and what one works the best for you, how light it is, where you're going to carry it, and all that stuff. So, and that's the research we do. It can be fun, it can be irritating, but so don't give up on that. All right, guys, I'm going to go into some photography tips, and then I'll answer the questions at the end. And these are some things I put together here that are kind of a mix, and some of them are, I mean, a couple of them are just to OM because of like Pro Capture or something like that, but most of them are for any camera system for the most part. So we'll go through that. So one of them is which setting. What do I set my camera at? And I'm pretty loose with this. You'll have a lot of guys that'll go, well, you got to shoot manual and that's it, and you got to shoot raw and that's it. And I don't believe that. I mean, one of my ambassadors, Steve Ball, shoots JPEG. He doesn't want to edit. He wants to shoot birds and enjoy it. And that's okay. It's a matter of how you shoot. So what I've done here is I've put in aperture priority, shutter priority, and manual. And these are the three that I would obviously recommend for shooting birds. And it's really up to you to either learn or know what you're comfortable with here. Because I think that any one of them will do it. It's just a matter of knowing how to set the camera for these and which one's going to work best for you. And I mix them up a little bit. A lot of times I'll walk around and I'm shooting aperture priority, but I may go into manual. Like when I do my custom settings for birds in flight, I'm in manual. But it's really a matter of taking control of the camera. And aperture priority, shutter priority is pretty much the camera is doing the opposite. So if you're setting the aperture, the camera's setting the shutter. If you're setting the shutter, an S, the camera setting the aperture or the opening on the lens, and then manual, you're doing both. You're taking control of everything. Nice thing about aperture and shutter priority is you can easily get to your exposure compensation, brighter or darker. So if you have a bird that's got a white head, like an egret or an eagle, you can take that exposure down nice and quick, and so you don't blow out those highlights in the head. But most of the cameras now with manual, you could do that as well. So I always tell people, what are you comfortable shooting? Incorporate people's settings into those modes. What I did find is that custom modes are very important when it comes to bird photography. And custom modes, like this is an example of my OM1 or my EM ones where you had 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? And basically what I use them for is modes like birds in flight and then my pro capture mode. And this is how you set up on my camera, but other cameras are probably just as simple. You put all your settings in. Let's say I'm doing birds in flight. I put all my settings for birds in flight, and then I go in the menu and I go to my custom modes and I assign it to one of those custom modes. What this does is when you're out shooting, let's say I put birds in flight on custom mode 1. I go to C1, I'm already set up for birds in flight. So if I'm walking around, I don't know, aperture priority, and I'm shooting birds, they're perching and all that, and then I want to shoot birds in flight, I flip my dial to C1 and I'm in, let's say, for instance, 2,500 of a second. I got all my focus points selected. I'm in bird photography focus. I'm in a starting point for birds in flight. So it just makes it a lot quicker to have that camera ready, right? So that's what custom modes are for, and they're very useful. A lot of cameras also have function buttons like mine, where you can make some of the buttons on the cameras different features. And the nice thing about custom modes and function buttons is that you're keeping yourself out of the big menu. You're keeping yourself just on the camera so that your hands can control everything. Don't worry about ISO. This is something, especially with 4/3, a lot of people are like, oh, it's noisy. It's a smaller sensor. It's noisy. Low light's noisy. The cameras have come a long way, and the software that's out there now is absolutely amazing. This shot was from a few years ago at 6400 ISO. It was almost pitch black. It was raining out. With the OM1, this is at 8,000. It's during the day, but still 8,000 on a 4/3 camera. How about 12.6? And how about 25.6 on the OM1? That's at 5 o'clock in January in Ohio. So they've come a long way now when it comes to low light. Whenever you have shadow and darkness, you're going to have noise, no matter what sensor. A smaller sensor like this is going to have more noise, but you clean it up in your editing. And they've gotten a ton better. There are some guys that say, well, I shoot in the morning before the light comes up. To me, that's not photography. That's shooting silhouette. Yeah, for that, you want something a little different. But for the most part, 90% of the time, I'll have you covered with this system. And this is where I was talking about exposure compensation. Now, let's say you're an aperture priority or shutter. Your front dial on my camera is going to allow you to make it darker or lighter, your exposure. And the beauty of mirrorless cameras is that you're going to see that exposure as you do it. So no matter which brand you use, a mirrorless camera allows you to see what you're doing for your exposure. So again, this example of this stuffed animal, I love this. But you have that bright head. And so when you see that picture after, you might be overexposed. So you want to maybe take it down a couple of stops. And in the camera, you'll see it getting darker or you'll see it getting brighter. My cameras allow you to do, I call them the blinkies. But you set those up and basically if you're too bright, your screen will highlight orange and your shadow area will highlight purple. And you can take that exposure down until the orange is gone. And then you know you're not clipping. Or you can use your histogram as well. And you'll see if you're clipping on the right. So there's different ways to see what you're doing. But even visually, you can kind of see that you're overexposed or not. So it's a great way to adjust that darkness and lightness. All right, this is what I was talking about before about the focus limiter. So this one's important. So on some of your lenses, you'll have what's called a focus limiter. What I'm showing here is that in my cameras, like my OM1, it's also built into the camera. One of my old friends, one of my old techs got this idea and they put it in the camera where you can actually create 3 settings for a focus limiter in the camera. So you can do it with any lens. But most of the time, you'll see it on a lens. It'll look something like this. And what that focus limiter is, and you'll see it on that 300 millimeter you have as well. You just got to remember that you're using it. Otherwise, you'll be like, why isn't it focusing? What a limiter does is basically, so in the center there, in this example is the 150 to 400. It says 1.3 meters to infinity. So I'm using the whole range of the lens. There's a lot of glass in those lenses to move. So 1.3 to 6 meters means that I'm shooting like telemacro. I'm shooting birds in front of me. The camera's not going to try to focus past 6 meters. So you're limiting where it's focusing so that glass doesn't have to move as much. When you go to 6 meters to infinity, in this example here, I'm shooting birds in flight or birds that are out there in a pond or in a swamp. So I'm not focusing in front of me. So if there's branches in front of me, it's not going to grab those on accident. It's going to keep focusing 6 meters or out. And so that's the focus limiter. So when you're photographing, like, say, those warblers that are close, you might get away with like 1.3 to 6 meters, and it's not going to focus past there. The only problem is you got to remember that you're doing that, because then all of a sudden you go to focus on a bird that's out there and you're like, why isn't it focusing? That's the only limitation to the focus limiter, but it does allow the lens to help focus faster. Because you're limiting it to that range. So hopefully that helps. But I would try that. And I would try the autofocus plus manual and see how that works
Thank
as
you.
a starting point. Sure, sure. Here's some recommended settings. Now, again, these are grain of salt, because whenever I show settings, I'm still learning. And also online, if you copy somebody's settings, I've had more people come into to camera stores with their cameras going, please fix this because I can't figure it out now. I copied somebody's settings. Take your style and incorporate settings, play with stuff, bring it in. So like if I do birds in flight as an example on a custom setting, this is pretty much about what I'll do. So I'll set my camera to manual mode. I put shutter priority or manual here. I'll set it at about, I usually go about 2,500 of a second. That's like a starting point for me. And then I can shift it from there, but it's just a starting point for that custom mode. I'll do either a 25-point target or the whole frame, the whole target, because you figure I'm going to be shooting birds in the sky. So I want that bird focus to grab any one of them, because I'll be using the bird focus on this. Silent sequential shooting in the OM1, it's called SH2, which is sequential high 2. Sequential high 1 is basically where it focuses once and meters once. I want it to focus and meter in between every shot. So I do SH2 and I set it for 16.7 frames per second. That's blackout free and it's pretty fast. And then just continuous autofocus with the bird focus. You don't want to use tracking. You let the bird focus be your tracking and just use continuous autofocus. And then I'll start out with, usually ISO auto on my custom modes. But if it's, like I was in Florida a couple months ago and it was super bright, it was constant, and I'll take that down to like a 400 ISO or whatever. It just depends on the lighting. But if it's a day where it's cloudy or it's changing or whatever, I'll leave it in auto and it'll be fine. And then I leave my image stabilizer in auto as well. And what you'll see here is now if I go to birds in action, it's about the same. I mean, I keep everything pretty much the same. I'm at like maybe 1,000th of a second, maybe 12.5 or 16.7 frames a second, maybe a single point target or multi, but it's just about the same settings. So I could use that birds in flight for the same thing and just shift it for birds in action, just change my shutter speed or whatever. So again, those custom settings help to do this. Now, Pro Capture is something I'll talk about in a second. I know we're running out of time here. But basically Pro Capture is a special mode that we have, and you're seeing it now in the Nikons. If anybody has like a Z9 or a Z8, you're seeing a little bit of that pre-capture. It's moving its way up to the larger sensors. We've had it since 2016, so it's full raw, full 120 frames per second. So Pro Capture is similar, but I put it on a different custom function. Again, SH2, I'll use like a multi-point manual, very, very similar, but I'll have that Pro Capture set as opposed to just the fast frame per second shooting. So really quick, what is Pro Capture? I'm almost done here. Basically, it's like getting your reaction time back. So you ever see swallows in a tree and they take off from a hole in the tree and you take the picture and you got 50 shots of a hole in a tree? and no swallow. That's basically what this does. You'll get the swallow every time. And the reason is you focus on that tree and the bird takes off. You hit the shutter on the camera and we're not fast enough. The camera's fast enough and we're fast enough to see it, but our reaction time isn't fast enough. What this does is I focus and meter on that hole in the tree. The bird comes out and takes off, and then I hit the shutter. And I've already captured it because it's already buffering in the camera. So I get that shot back. So baseball player hitting a ball with a bat, bride kissing a groom, you never miss the shot. It takes a little getting used to. It uses battery because you're basically almost like taking video, you're buffering. But it's a really cool feature. I find I don't use it that much anymore. You kind of learn the bird and you start to learn the reaction, right? We had a thing at work in Portugal. We were supposed to be showing this. They pulled me on stage and I failed. Somebody threw a beach ball at one of my coworkers and I was supposed to catch the reaction and I caught the beach ball hitting him on the head because I'm used to capturing like at the moment and not after the moment and then hitting it. So, but it's a really cool feature. It's really fun. All right, let me get to the next one here. And these are just two more slides I believe I have. My personal custom settings, just to give you an idea of how I set up my camera. I try to keep it easy. So again, birds in flight and pro capture are my two custom modes. And pretty much what I said before, the auto ISO, the all target, the bird focused manual, that's where those go, right? However, I actually put those on one of those on a function button as well. So the AEL button on the back of the camera, I make that custom one. So I don't have to go to that custom one on the mode dial. I could just press that button and I'm in birds in flight, which is really cool. So that's a quick way to do that. The AI detection autofocus on the OM12, you could find it in the super control panel, which is our quick menu, but I put it on a button so I could turn it on and off if I want, and I could change it on the fly. The high res mode is something you can use it with birds, but mostly it's when they're very, very still though, mostly landscape, but I leave that on the record button. And then we have live ND and live graduated neutral density. Again, these are more landscape modes though. When a bird is still and you use live ND and the water's moving, it's really cool. So you can use them for those effects, but that's it. I mean, very basic with my cameras, very basic how I set them up. And that's what I do is try to get a lot of those computational features out of the menu and onto the camera body. So, all right, that's it, you guys, on that one. So hopefully that helped a little bit here. All right. So any other questions that I can get through, you guys?
Yeah, I got a couple of them in the chat,
Cool.
Mike, real quick. And I also see Michael has his hand raised, but we'll get to the chat ones first. Got three in the chat. Joan asks, what noise reduction software do you use to sharpen up in post-production?
Sure. So there's a couple things. I mean, a lot of people use Topaz and all that. I've some people complain about it, but I've used Lightroom since I started. I don't do a ton of editing. And I find the new denoise in Lightroom to be very good. Also OM Workspace, our own software, if you don't want to spend any money, has a really good noise reduction to it now. So, but a lot of people swear by Topaz. That's the one that a lot of people go with. I do Lightroom.
Excellent, thank you. And then Mindy asks, when you were discussing focus limit, was that on the lens or the camera? And then she also followed up just to say that she has a Panasonic lens on an OM1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually on some of the lenses. You'll see it on the 300 millimeter. You'll see it on the 150 to 400 and the 100 to 400, as well as the 150 to 600. So most of my zooms have it. It is also in the camera, in my camera. It's not in the Panasonic, I don't believe. It may be, but it's something we started putting in the cameras a couple of years ago. That you can use it with any lens when that's on, including a Panasonic. But yeah, so it depends on the lens, and you'll see it on the side of the lens. You'll see a switch for the Panasonic lenses. I'm trying to remember if the 100 to 400 has a limiter on it. I think it does. I think it's on that lens, but I can't remember. I'm not as familiar anymore. I used to work at Panasonic, but it's been a while. So yeah, I'm not as familiar right now. But yeah, you might see it. If you see it on the side, you see those numbers, the meters, then you definitely have it on there. Hope that
Excellent.
helps. Yeah.
Toby has a question, and Toby asks, how and when do you use CAF sensitivity in bird photography?
Yeah, so the CAF sensitivity is for your continuous autofocus. It's a good one because I got to remember which one goes which way. There's up to +2 and down to -2, and I got to remember which one's which. But one of them, when you go +1 +2 or -1 -2, one of them is for, let's say you have a bird, or let's say you have a duck and they're in a pond and you're photographing a duck and you're focused on a duck and another duck goes in front of that duck. I believe it's -1 and -2 will keep you more sticky on that first duck you're looking at. And then plus, I believe is the one where, let's say you have birds in flight or something like that, it's going to stick a little more to that bird. So, and then the 0 is normal. So, what you want to do is find that for your specific shooting. If you're finding that the camera is not grabbing that subject, then you can start playing with those, plus and minus settings for continuous autofocus to make it a little more sticky. So, and you should see that in the manual or even online if you look it up. It'll show you which one is which. But I believe -1 -2 is for the, like I was giving you the example of duck or an erratic sort of movement, and then the other one is more sticky for like a bird in flight or something. So, but definitely look that up to verify. But that's what those are for. They just make it a little tighter.
Thank you, Mike. And then let's see, Tina has a question, kind of a general question. She asks, where
Sure.
can I go, whether that's online, in person, doesn't matter, to just learn more about my camera? She has a Nikon D3500 with a
Sure.
Nikon lens. She says
Yep.
she normally just uses it to point and shoot, but she wants to expand her camera use by learning more about it.
Yeah, I mean, photography in general or the camera itself. So there's a lot of good stuff out there online, like YouTube, everything. The problem is there's a lot of bad stuff too. And so that's the thing. Like we have some guys online, like a Rob Trek or somebody who's not really affiliated with us, but they love the product and they're great at training. And you might find some Nikon guys the same way, where they're really passionate about the brand and they're good at showing that specific camera. If you're close to a store, like a Hunt's as an example, they offer classes in the store. So your local retail store usually will offer classes on photography and on those cameras specifically as well. Usually they'll have classes that you can pay for and do that. Photography in general, if you just want to go online, there's also some great resources like Creative Live is one of them. There's one called, I believe it's called Linda, if I remember right, and they have some great like just basic photography. If you want to learn like the photography courses, aperture, shutter, manual, and all that stuff. So there are some great resources. But if you do have, Tina, a local retail store near you, like a Hunt's, they typically will offer, like one-on-one classes in person, which are very good because you're in person, and then you can work with the same person. Yeah.
And then a couple just real quick ones. I know you got to go. Let's see. Mindy was asking, does the OM1 have a limiter?
Yeah, that's got a focus limiter built in. Yep.
All right. Mark asks, do you ever use SAF?
Yeah, I do. Mark, I'll use SAF. Sometimes when the birds are more perching, I use it obviously for landscape as well and stuff like that. And there's a trick to SAF as well. So on the OM1, if you're using that camera, the switch that's on the back, the function switch next to the EVF, it's a 1 and 2 switch. You can actually make the number 2, let's say, single autofocus, number 1 continuous, or vice versa. So instead of having to go in the menu and constantly change back and forth, you can just hit the switch and go from one focus to a different focus, which is kind of cool.
Thanks.
Sure.
Awesome. Then let's see. Sherry asked, what brand is the 150 through 600 millimeter you mentioned? She says she does not see that as an OM Olympics lens.
Yeah, it's an OM system. That would be the name of the brand. That's our new brand. So OM system. You'll see the OM system 150 to 600. It's a 5 to 6.3.
Wonderful. Mindy just kind of
I
popped
see
back in and
Mindy on
asked,
there. Yeah. So Mindy on
yeah,
the OM1, the focus limiter, you'd have to set it and it's in the menu. It's good question. I don't have the camera in front of me. Or I'd bring it up on the menu. I should have had one hooked up. But you'll find it in that menu. I believe it's in the gear section, and I could be wrong. It might be shooting menu 1 or 2. But you'll see focus limiter. It'll say AF limiter on there. You'll be able to play with that. unless it's on your lens, then you can just do it right on the lens. But you can set up to 3 of those. So yeah.
Excellent. And then, like I said, Michael's been patient. Michael's had his hand raised. So, Michael, if
Oh,
you
hey,
want to
what's
go
up,
ahead and
Michael?
just, yeah, unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question now.
Yeah, thanks. So you kind of answered a little, but I'm a very new photographer,
Sure.
old-time birder. I have the OM1
Yep.
Mark II, and I have the 100-400 lens,
Nice.
and I'm messing around with it, but I don't even understand the words you're using, basically.
Yeah.
So
It's,
I need
yeah.
an OM1 for dummies.
Yep.
If you have any either manuals or books or YouTubes you could recommend.
I do. I have a couple things I could send you. So a lot of the terminology eventually it'll stick, but it is hard to. It's like me with video. I'm not a video guy. Um, Here's what you want to do. There's a couple things. So if you want to look at books, one of the book and Hunt's probably sells them, but Rocky Nook is a really good publisher. Rocky Nook, and they usually have books like Mastering the OM1, something like that. Or you might find one that's not a Rocky Nook, and they're written by people where it's layman's terms, and it's much better than the manual. That's one way to do it. The other thing is, and we're doing more and more of these, so bear with us. But if you go to our website, explore.omsystem.com, and you go to inspiration, there's learn and support or inspiration is one of the links. And you can actually select your camera, and it'll actually give you all kinds of learning on there. So we have like short videos we're doing, we have longer videos, we're having menu videos, and they're all free. The techs are doing them, and it's just taking us a little bit of time to build it. But a lot of them go right to our YouTube channel, and they show you how to do it. And a lot of them are right there on the website. They'll have articles and stuff like that. So you just want to go to that support section, or that learning section or inspiration. It's the same place where we also show like workshops and events we're doing and stuff like that. So that's all right there. But that's, yeah. So check out our YouTube, OM System, and you'll find some really good stuff. Great resources.
Excellent. And then would
Sure.
you mind, you see the question that Richard put up there? And then that's going to have
Yeah.
to be the last one, everybody,
Yep, I see
unfortunately.
that. Sure,
Yep.
Richard. The teleconverters will work on the 300. They will not work on the 12 to 100. So they'll work on the 300 millimeter that you have for sure. They're very limited. They work on the 300, the 100 to 400, the 150 to 400, the 150 to 600, and they work also on the 40 to 150, and they work on the 90 millimeter macro. That's the only non-zoom that they'll work on. So yeah, but they don't work on the 12 to 100. That's a fantastic lens, by the way. It's a good combo. Great combo.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. That lens is unfortunate, that 12 to 100, because when somebody's excuse me, when somebody says to me, I'm buying this camera, what one lens do you recommend for, an all-around lens? And I go, I don't want to sell you this one because you'll never buy another one. It's sharp from 12 to 100. It's a fantastic lens. Yeah, great combo.
Excellent.
Now
Well,
you do have, I will say,
Yeah, go
not
ahead,
to
Mike.
interrupt, and I know we're going over, you do
Yeah, go
have the
ahead.
digital teleconverter in the camera. So you do have a 2x digital, but what it does is it crops. It's JPEG and it crops. So it's just like if you cropped it later. But in a pinch, if you shoot JPEG in RAW or something like that, you could press a button and zoom in with that 12 to 100. So yeah.
Cool.
I do want to mention one thing. I do want to mention one thing real quick. If you guys ask about classes, we do offer one-on-one classes. So if you guys on Zoom or so if you guys are looking to do classes, I put my email, it might be down in the chat. But I know Donito did it too, but you can reach out to me if you're looking to take a class, and it's a class we can design, whatever you guys are looking for, we can design a class based on what you're looking for. So we do offer that half an
Oh,
hour
good to
as
know,
well
Gary. I didn't know that.
as well
Yeah.
as our, and we also do a lot of online. We also do a lot of other online classes. You can go to the Hunt's website, Hunt's EDU. You'll see all the classes that we offer, as well as we do trips all around the country now and all around the world. So that's another part of Hunt's Photo. You go into Hunt's Photo EDU, you can see everything that we offer.
Excellent. Thank you, Gary.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Just want to give a big thank you to Mike Amico today. Also, a big thank you to Gary and Hunt's Photo. kind of like they were talking. I'll send out a wrap-up email to everybody today. Like I said earlier, in case anybody had to step away, or if you want to go back and rewatch a portion, we'll have that YouTube link in the email. And then I'll also, in that email, I'll include a links to Hunk's photo as well as to the Olympus YouTube page as well. So that way, if you want to go watch some tutorial videos there, you can do that too. It takes me a couple hours to upload everything, so look for that a little bit later today. But at this time, we always ask everybody, if you'd like to or you're so inclined, just unmute yourself, give Mike and Gary a big thank you. I'm not a photographer, and I felt like I learned a ton today. So this was an incredible presentation. Really, really appreciate it,
Thank
Mike.
you. Thank you. I
Thanks.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Great
Mike.
job. Great job.
Thanks, everybody. As long as you left with something, I'm happy. That's all.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Be happy.
I hope to
Yeah.
see you guys in a couple months. So, come see me.
Mhm.
Yeah, good deal. Yeah, I'll see you in August, Mike. I look forward to it. You
Absolutely.
too, Gary.
Looking forward to it too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Have a great
All right.
day, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
All
All
right,
right. Take
bye-bye.
care. Bye. Bye.